So here we are, Monday afternoon. How are you this afternoon, Pat?
A grand, Jude. I see we're sort of digging in for winter now.
Aye, that's right. I went out for
Was
a
it the
walk.
was it Heaney's had that line about sheltering behind the wall or something? Yeah, or have I got that wrong?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know any that well, to tell you the truth. I know
Neither
some
do
of
I.
his
That's what.
early poems, but there's later ones I hadn't a clue about.
No,
But it sounds like him, It sounds like him.
no, it's dark and dreary, and you just know we're now like the time, as you know, changed yesterday. So we're into the winter solstice area. Of,
Right.
you have to wait for what, 6 weeks for that?
Yeah, we've got to hunker down. The evening's coming down, darkness coming in very quickly, very early. I looked out at 5 o'clock yesterday. It was pretty well dark.
Exactly.
And then the chill went out for a walk. The sun was shining, but there was a wind blowing, and it was really quite sharp.
Yeah.
I remember the kids, the first time I saw anybody ever wearing a balaclava was in Canada. That's a fact. The kids used to wear them to school because they're really, really cold. And it was a very sensible thing to do because all that was exposed was their eyes.
Well, I knew a few boys wore them as well, but it wasn't for that reason.
It wasn't quite as cold around there.
No, it wasn't quite as cold, no.
Yeah. Okay, let's have a look at some of the stories that have been grabbing the news. Eric's Examiner and a lot of others are looking at COP26. And the Examiner's headline is COP26 must be about action, not rhetoric, warns Micheál Martin as crucial climate summit begins. So Micheál's warning them that they better. It sounds a wee bit like the Skibbereen Eagle warning.
That was going through exactly what was going through my head.
He said something else in this interview that I thought was sort of caught my eye anyway. He said, "There is nothing worse than going down Patrick Street in Cork and seeing a bus belching out diesel fumes." I'm sure that's not very nice, but I can think of a few things that would be even worse.
I think I can think of a few things worse.
It's like somebody dropping a nuclear bomb, or if Trump got re-elected, or whatever. But the question is, Pat, maybe you had a better sense of this. Do you think they're going to come to an agreement? And is their agreement going to have any? Will it actually save them? Well, what we're told, the planet's at stake.
Jude, I know, someone I'd love to be positive about this because I think it's so serious, but I'm not. Jude, the Chinese guy, Yang Xiping, whatever, he didn't even bother showing up. What do you call him?
Putin.
A Russian. Jesus, going out of my head. Putin. He sent his foreign secretary Lavrov. Bolsonaro couldn't even be bothered apparently replying. He didn't. The guy in Brazil who's cutting down acres and acres of the forestry, and and you could keep on going, Jude, and and then of course we had, and you always have to come back to people like Trump, who took America basically out of every agreement, didn't regard the environment as a priority at all. So, Jude, when you take all that into perspective, like I heard Boris Johnson saying that we're on the doomsday clock, we're at a minute to midnight, and Jude, that does seem to be quite serious. What is it? I think Prince Charles said yesterday we were in the last chance salute. Jude, everybody knows this is deadly serious, but I think the old vested interest, the Chinese are going to turn around and say it's all very well for Western countries with their well-developed infrastructures and wealth. They tell our people that, go on, you starve because, and so on. India, the same. So, Jude,
I don't think they're being asked to starve. I think they're being asked to reduce their carbon emissions and do it radically, the same as everybody else. You see, what puzzles me is, what are these guys thinking of? I mean, don't these people have children and grandchildren, and aren't they thinking, what's China going to be like in 50, 100 years time? Surely to God they're aware of the fact that this is going to hit everybody, and it is a global problem.
Absolutely. Well, Jude, there's more than a little suspicion that COVID-19 initiated out of China. people there have been wearing masks for years because of environmental concerns. You know, some of the places, the smoke and the whatever has been so bad there, and they have had issues with pollution in rivers and all the rest. So the Chinese have had first-hand experience. But there's this almost dismissal that no one's going to tell the Chinese or the Russians or Brazil what to do. And Jude, you know, when you get that sort of an attitude, Jude, even like, I just heard somebody in RT there, there was a woman on, she was talking about, even this summer, there's serious flooding in Germany and Belgium. I'd forgotten about that. You know, and they said this was just another example of climate change.
I don't know. What baffles me is that they could be, are they ignorant of it? Do they know about it, but they push it to the back of their heads? Or are they suicidal? Because if what we're told is correct, if we keep going the way we're going, in 100 years' time, well, I don't know what, the world, if the world can still be inhabited, it'll be in an awful, awful mess.
Jude, I think as of last Friday, 5 million people, according to the economists, have died from COVID. But they reckon that's a gross underestimation, that it could be as high as 16 million people have died. And Jude, there's, I actually put that up on social media, but a guy come back to me. He says that's not 0.07 of the world's population, as if 16 or 5 million or 16 million people is an insignificant number. I don't give a monkey's, Jude. 5 million people, if it's 5 million or 16 million people, that's a hell of a lot of deaths and a hell of a lot of people, families now that don't have members that they did have this time last year.
No, but that's COVID. COVID is
yeah.
Peanuts
what they're saying is a lot of this stuff is coming down the track. They say climate change is facilitating a lot of changes in human, what did you say, trends and so on. You know, a couple of years ago, so many times have you heard that COVID was a once in a generation or once in 100 years event. Some scientists are saying, no, this will become more common.
Well, I frankly, if the only problem, it sounds ridiculous, but if the only problem we had was COVID, I'd be a very happy man. The fact of the matter is, Pat, like yourself, I have grandchildren, and they will live, all being well, until the end of this century. Yeah. Now, the end of this century, if we keep going where we're going in different countries, the world will be an appalling place. It'll be a post-apocalyptic. You know, these horror movies you're always seeing, post-apocalypse. It really, if what they say is true, it'll be a dreadful place. And you're looking at this child and saying that's what that kid's going to be experiencing. That's shocking.
Jude, the president of the Maldives, I think they're a group of islands, aren't they, in the Indian Ocean? He is one of the, I think he might be the first speaker, or anyway, he's one of the main speakers today. Jude, they're only something like 2 meters above sea level, and sea levels are rising. If they keep going the way, the Maldives will disappear. Now, that's the reality. You know, that's not hypothetical. That's reality for them.
Well, you know, I was going to say, but unfortunately, it wouldn't really work either. I was going to say that if ever there was a case for enforcing laws with violence, you know, this is it. Because clearly it's suicide for everybody if everybody doesn't go along with the effort to curb carbon emissions, etc. But the problem, of course, is, as you pointed out, that two of the main offenders are Russia and China, and both of them have got nuclear weapons. So, you know, you have a choice between waiting to the end of the century and having the world wiped out of, or at least on the way to being wiped out of human habitation, or having it happen suddenly right now in an effort to get China and idiots like that to agree to the deal. I think it goes beyond, I've said them as well, but I think it goes beyond them. I mean, Joe Biden couldn't get the bill that he wanted to go put through in terms of you know, a Green Deal. He couldn't get it through in its original form, and all the Republicans are against it. Crazy.
But Jude, it's almost as if the Republicans have gone back to some sort of what would you say, fundamentalist, anti-science, anti-medical position. Jude, when you read some of the stuff, as I'm a more frequent user of social media than you are, and Jude, when you read some of the stuff, you know, science denying is now actually, you know, it was a minority sport some time ago. It has now gone mainstream.
Well, here's I agree with you, and I think that's regrettable. But at the same time, we would need to admit the fact that, for me anyway, all of the science, I have to take it on trust because I don't know anything about science.
I'm not a scientist. Yeah.
But so these guys would say, well, you can take it on trust, but I don't trust these guys. And in a way, I could kind of understand that too, because we know from our experience here that authorities, the British, for example, lied their heads off and continue to do so about their part in the Troubles. So it is possible that apparently very respectable establishments will lie through their teeth to the public about things. So in that respect, you could understand these science deniers maybe feeling that the scientists and the governments are up to something.
Yeah.
Or am I being too soft?
No, you can't. Hey, we might be discussing it a little, but see nowadays, the old days of you could believe politicians to a certain degree, or governments anyway, maybe not politicians, but that day's definitely gone. They just lie through their teeth now, particularly the British. Well, Biden, you would hope, has restored a wee bit of credibility to the White House. Like Trump, what was it, 31,000 either lies or misleading facts? Yeah.
I'd be tempted to say that it's just that they've come out into the open now. They always lied, but now they're doing it brazenly. But that mightn't be as true. I think there's more lying going on now than ever before, and a lot of it is shameless and open. But then, of course, behind all that, there's God knows how much lying is going on, and you don't know about it. As your man said, but
the reality, Jude, is somebody has to do something about this climate thing. Jude, we can see it all around the place. The climate that in Ireland today is very different from the climate of my childhood. Australia had the worst fires in generations, if not ever. The last 7 years on Earth have been the warmest 7 years in recorded history. So, Jude, how many red flags do you need?
I have a final thought on this, because we could be beating at this all day, because, as I say, it's a depressing topic. And it looks as if there isn't the political will to address it, which amazes me. But I see in the Daily Express, of all things, they tell us that, this idea of planting trees. And I was reading about a guy who's got a plan to plant, I don't know, if he could get 3 trillion trees or something planted, that would solve the problem. But the Daily Express points out that it takes 10 years for a tree to grow sufficiently to begin to trap carbon emissions. So, if you have to wait 10 years.
Even if we start it now?
Yeah. And the signs are they're not going to start now. God, I'm depressed, Pat. Why couldn't you? I don't know. If they're as slow to act on their commitments as they are in being obscure as to exactly what's required, then, we're finished, really. I'm just going to say, Pat, I don't know quite what it is that they have to do. Do you know exactly what they have to do?
No, they have to cut carbon emissions, and they have to start.
How much, though? By how much?
What is it? Geez, Jude, I'm not sure. But anyway, the target is by 2050. I know that much. They're saying they have to get, and now the scientific level, you're asking the wrong guy.
But they should be able to translate that for us, Pat. They should be able to put that in layman's language and be specific about what we need to do by 2030, what we need to do by 2040, 2050. It's sort of hazy for people like ourselves.
Yeah, we're just told we need to have a target, to have it all. Is it 0 emissions by 2050?
Yeah, that's the idea. Well, that kind of tracking it anyway and doing it in 5 years and 10 years, they should be tracking every single year and saying, how far have you got? And they should be working out sanctions. I mean, crippling sanctions for anybody who didn't toe the line. And I would say the same thing applies to Putin and China. Otherwise, we're all screwed. We really are. We'll not be here. We'll not be here for our.
No, we won't be here. But it's human greed that's actually causing the problem. But anyway, Jude,
isn't the human species amazing? We've done such wonderful things, and we've done such bloody, I'm tempted to say, fucking stupid things.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more.
Stunning. Anyway, okay, let's go on to something even stupider on a small scale. And that's the fishing war that France is with the UK. Oh no.
I laughed. This morning I was reading the Guardian this morning online, and it says, "Let's trust the Foreign Secretary, Britain's Foreign Secretary, has warned France they've got 48 hours to sort of withdraw the threat of." And I was thinking, they must be shaking in their boots over in Paris. Jude, you know that stuff I saw in the Express. I just saw a headline. Truss puts what do you call the French president, that wee guy, Macron. I'm having a brain freeze today, those leaders. But anyway, the headline says, Truss puts Macron on his place. This is the Daily Express. The reality is nobody trusts the Brits anymore. Apparently, the short potted version of what's going on, the French are claiming that they made a deal and Brexit with regard to licenses for French boats going into British waters. The Brits have said they've issued 80 to 90% of the licenses. France is saying, if that's so, they must all, you must have the 10% must all be French, because very few of their boats have got into British waters, and they think it's deliberate. So they're saying, if you're going to play that game, by the way, Jude, as from tomorrow, unless there's some sort of they're saying we will refuse entry to various British boats, and we will start doing customs checks on anything landing at airports. So the Brits are threatened. Truss has said she will go to take legal action about this if it happens, and so on. So, Jude, it looks like Brexit's been proven so good so far.
Right. I see she's given them 48 hours to back down. I think that's
back down, yes, and I'm sure.
I mean, if you're asking for trouble, that's the way to talk to people. You better back down. As we've said before, when you do that to people, they tend to dig their heels in and say, no way. I'm not sure who's right. I know for a fact that Emmanuel Macron is running for president next year. So I'm sure he has that in mind in terms of the French. And he'll want to talk it up and show that France can't be pushed around, which is kind of understandable. And Boris Johnson, as usual, wants things to be in a churn and wants to make it look as if he's standing up for Britain in the post-Brexit world, and no damned frog is going to push him around. And English, I mean, I use that word frog in quotation marks because that's the kind of language that the Brits tend to use when they're referring to the French particularly. Foreigners generally, but the French particularly, there's something about the French that they cannot bear. I'm not sure what it is. Is it their way with women, or is it their
I think buildings? The French culture has always been seen as superior, clothes, food, and the French have always been seen as more sophisticated than them. And I think that rankles with the good old Johnny, down in sort of Leeds and Yorkshire and all the rest of it. All these puffy French guys running around with their gitan or gitans, whatever the hell they call it. But Jude, here's the point. The French are claiming the Brits are throwing out some sort of facts in regards to license issue, and the French are saying, and the French are basically calling them liars. They're saying 40% of the French licenses have not been granted. And one of the guys, he's a French spokesman, apparently was quoted on BBC Radio 4. He says, all we're asking for is the Brits to keep their word to the agreement that they signed up to. So, Jude, they're saying the same about this as we're saying about the protocol. Exactly.
And I was trying to be fair-minded about that and say, well, Macron would be trying to get some propaganda value out of this. But again, in the one instance that we know about, the protocol, we know that the Brits will go back on their word like a flash and demand, present themselves as an injured party, that they're being asked to keep the treaty that they signed. Of course, if you go back to even George Bernard Shaw, of course, wasn't an Englishman, but he was speaking for the English when he said the French don't care what they do. Wasn't that from My Fair Lady or Pygmalion? Yeah. The French don't care what they do as long as they pronounce it correctly.
You see this thing about Boris Johnson, the populism that, as Jude, by the way, after the budget, they got a bounce again. It was a destructive budget for working class and poorer people, but they got a bounce again, which goes to show, as I keep pointing out, what a great leader Sir Keir Starmer is. But anyway, so they've gone up again. And this sort of stuff that, telling Johnny Foreigner where that plays, but and the lying and the cheating and the populism and the nationalism and jingoism, Jude, that's what the Tories are selling, and the electorate are loving it and buying it. Jude, it's covering up. The Brexit is a non-mitigated disaster. But go ahead.
But you see, I totally agree with that. And that, if you think historically back many years now, it would be about 40 years or so.
What are you planning?
Maggie Thatcher was really down in the polls, and she must have thanked her lucky stars when the Argentinians went into the Malvinas. And she immediately, it was all hands on deck, send the gunboats out there, let's have this war, let's put these damned RGs in their place. And her ratings shot up.
Exactly. She was almost certain to lose the election. You know, almost certain. Kinnock was almost certain he won. The polls all suggested he won, and she was the poll tax had made her deeply unpopular. And the old jingoistic Brits, and away we go.
I don't know. I really don't. But I guess the other thing is, it's such bad timing, Pat. You know, I'm just fiddling with the document here, right? The timing of it, at the same time as the event is happening in COP26 in Glasgow, here we have this damn scuffle between these two guys. It's, I don't know what is it. It's very hard to think of a comparison. It's like the house burning down and two kids fighting about who owns the toys.
Yeah. But the other thing is, you see, Boris wanted to bestride the world today. You know, there's 25,000 delegates at this bloody thing. It's massive.
Yeah.
And there's the world around it. Like, this is a really big deal. And this was his moment on the world stage. And the last thing he needs is this sort of bubbling away in the background. And it is bubbling away in the background because I think tomorrow is D-Day for both of them. So Jude, we could see a considerable escalation of this French fishing route tomorrow.
Are you suggesting that Boris doesn't want it to be this route to go on? I think he does, you know.
Well, Jude, you could come at it either way, but I think you're probably right. I think it's a great distraction from what's going on otherwise. And it's playing well to his home gallery about, you know, that we're standing up to the foreigners and we will not be pushed around. When you read Liz Truss, she has some nerve to talk about the French escalating it. You tell somebody you have 20 or 48 hours to back down.
Words fail me, Pat. For once, words fail me. Anyway, maybe we'll leave them and let them stew in their own juice for a while. I suspect that the thing will be sorted one way or another. They'll give the Brits a fig leaf as usual. It'll be the same thing as the protocol. And speaking of the protocol, Irish Times reports, same as everybody else, this morning at 6:30 a.m. I shouldn't have said morning. I should have said just 6:30 a.m. because that is the morning. A bus was hijacked in Jude by two armed, masked men, and they took the driver off. They sprayed it with flammable fuel, and they set it alight. And Nicola Mallon said that they muttered something about the protocol. Now, how Nicola Mallon knew that, I don't know, that they muttered rather than said it. But most people are taking it as being a protest against the fact that the protocol thing is still in place. The DUP swore blind in the person of Jeffrey Donaldson that if it wasn't solved by today, if the protocol thing hadn't been renegotiated by today, they would bring down Stormont. Now, of course, they haven't brought down Stormont, and Jeffrey Donaldson is saying, things have changed completely now. The EU's negotiations have said they wouldn't, and now they're doing it. But he's still rejecting this attack on the bus. Well, does it make sense to you? Do you see the link between the two, Pat?
I do, Jude. Let's be honest. Jude Paisley was an absolute master at bringing, like a grand old Duke of York. He brought all the guys up the hill. Now, when they jumped over into violence, Paisley was nowhere to be seen and said, "What? Not me, Governor," and so on. And I kept wondering, why did Jeffrey Donaldson and various other unions keep mentioning the threat of violence if they didn't get their own way? Dude, there was no sign of any violence at all in the streets, but they kept mentioning the threat of violence, and it's been the oldest tactic from ever I can remember. When the unions want something, they say, "Well, look, unless we get our way, it could be a hot summer, and if we don't get this, hey, there could be a threat of violence, and if we don't get this, something else could happen." And it's been a tactic from even basically the foundation of the state. And Jude, I think this is the latest one. Jude, by the way, the other more important point: 52% of the people surveyed last week by Queen's University are now in favour of the protocol.
Really?
Yeah.
That was the general population.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing I did a blog on it, and the thing I'm disappointed by is the fact that the people who are affected, particularly, that is, those people who are involved in business and trade and so on, that they haven't spoken up clearly enough, or for that matter, the journalists haven't gone to them and asked them clearly enough. Although I think I read something the other day where a majority of the people in business were happy enough with the protocol, but it hasn't been given enough headline.
But you know, another thing is Jim Allister and Sir Geoffrey. I've heard them on numerous public forums on TV and in the media and various other things saying the people of Northern Ireland reject this. Due to 52% of the population are now in favour of it. They are not speaking for the people of Northern Ireland. They're speaking for a section of the community, which is a minority.
Of course, there. Another thing is that we were promised this long, hot summer, but in fact, it didn't materialise. And there's a guy called Squinter, who I know, but that's the handle he uses on Twitter. And he's forever pointing out that these promises of mass demonstrations usually consist of a couple of hundred people objecting to the protocol. Yeah. And I mean, it isn't exactly province-wide violence when you see one bus being burnt in Newton.
Jude, I think that was just done deliberately, to remind people. And I think it probably strategically, somebody nodded, hey, go and burn that bus, just to remind, and just to let everybody know that the Protestant people aren't happy. Yeah. And Jude, I don't think there's any big stomach for this. I think it's it's sort of symbolic resistance, and it has to keep everybody on their toes.
Yeah, I'm sort of sorry in a way for unionists, because certainly unionist politicians, unionist people, not politicians, because they are caught in a bind here. On the one hand, the protocol, as you've pointed out, is good for business. The trade north-south, south-north is really flowing very well, and in fact increasing. On the other hand, it's part of a move, they believe, and I think they're right, towards a united Ireland, because if you can show that it works economically, you've got a much stronger hand to play when you say, I want to have it work politically as well. So I do feel some sympathy with unionists or unionist politicians trying to, square this particular circle or circle this particular square.
Yeah, but Jim, I sort of wonder why Geoffrey got himself. He's an experienced politician. He said he was basically, if it wasn't sorted by the end of October, he was going to bring down Stormont. Well, it was never going to be sorted by the 1st of November, and that was, anybody with a brain could have said that. In fact, the EU are saying absolutely no way. Anywhere where the single market is an operation, the European Court of Justice will always be an arbiter about it. And so they said that is not up for negotiation, and it's not going to be changed. So, what did Geoffrey think he was going to do? That he was just going to undo Brexit again after 4 years of negotiations?
I don't think he did, Pat. I don't think he did. I think he just.
But why did he say it then?
Well, he wanted to sound tough. He was a new leader, and he wanted to sound tough, and he wasn't going to be pushed around. This is a time when the polls were showing that the DUP was losing followers right, left, and centre, especially to the right wing, to the TUV. Yeah. So he was thinking short term. He was saying, what's the thing I can say now that'll stem this flood of supporters to Jim Allister? And this will do. This will hold it for a month or two, and then I'll think of something else. And fair play to him. You see, it hasn't exactly been rubbed in that Geoffrey said this. And now this has been proved.
He's trying to say now everything's changed now. Yeah. They're in serious negotiating mode, and look, we've got them to move and 80% and all this sort of stuff. And so I don't know, but sure, the red line wasn't supposed to be about this ECJ, and it was about this thing about the Constitution. No, has that changed?
No, it hasn't, and it won't change either. He hasn't actually. To be fair to me, he hasn't talked too much about the ECJ. He's talked more about the question of a breach between the trade rules for Northern Ireland and for the rest of the UK. Anyway, it's sort of sad, and I gather that the driver of that bus was really upset. And I mean, you would be, you know. I mean, it's all right for us to say, "Oh, it was only a bus being burnt, nobody was hurt." But if you were the driver of the bus, you would be pretty scared.
Yeah, two guys get on with masks and pointing guns at you, no matter who you are. That is a very frightening experience.
Yeah. But the scale of it is pretty tiny, all right, compared to what we were sort of threatened with. But time, as they say, will tell. And as you say, I would agree with what you say, that there really doesn't appear to be a stomach for this thing, because it's just too hard to sell. Too hard to sell. Factor against.
When 52% of the people are in favour of it, and a lot of them are likely to be of unionist hue.
Yeah,
you know, it's very hard to turn it. A lot of unionist businesses they're probably telling the workers, "Hey, this big contract we've got down south is actually worth money. It's keeping you in a job."
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's go to our final item for today. I do hope you've got your tanker of the week.
That's for Friday.
Oh, is that Friday? Okay. You have all week to think about it. I had a few in mind myself, but anyway, we'll leave it for Friday.
We'll go when we're finished.
No, we'll leave it for Friday. Let people think about it. We may get some suggestions passed into us. Anyway, you were drawn to this one about that poll that was carried out by the Teachers Union of Ireland, showing that there's a problem with teachers and their numbers. Do you want to tell us about it?
I was listening to a guy on RT last week, and he said that he was a principal of school, I think somewhere about Drogheda, I'm open to correction, and he said he rang 30. One morning, several teachers were off, I presume because of COVID, and he rang 30. He individually rang 30 teachers, no substitutes available. They did a survey quite recently of 120 secondary schools, and nearly every one of them have unfulfilled vacancies, can't get teachers. Now, the reason that came to my mind is, and I heard it mentioned again this morning, that's why I threw it at you. I have two relatives in my family circle. There's a wee girl, she moved to Spain there at the end of the summer. She's got a job teaching in Madrid. And my sister's daughter is a math teacher, and she moved to, I think it's Dubai. Now, this is some time ago. And Jude, you sort of ask yourself a question. And by the way, just throw this in as an additional, the number of nurses now in the Republic of Ireland is at crisis point. There's so many have left and gone to other fields. So I'm sort of saying, but let's stick to the teachers for a minute. Jude, this is one of the things we at the minute, we have a high tech sort of thing going on. There's a lot of big American companies, and one of the things we need are maths and science. And the number of teachers of maths and science are dwindling, or is dwindling at a massive rate. So it's a real serious issue.
Yeah, it certainly is. From what you say, the figures are right. But why do you think they aren't available? Why aren't there teachers for sciences and so on? And some other subjects as well, like Irish and maths and so on.
If you remember when the crisis hit, the then Minister for Education, Mr. Bruton, John Bruton's brother, I can't remember his first name at the moment. Richard, he introduced a two-tier system. If you had been a teacher the year before, you were getting something about $7,000 a year more than the guy who came in after that. And a lot of young people said, wait a minute. In fact, I have a niece, another one. There's a lot of teachers in my family. She's teaching up around Sligo, and she said it was grossly. She says, I feel really bad. And this is a couple of years back. She said, I feel really bad about it. She says, I am earning $7,000 a year more. And she's only a couple of years older than the guy who'd come in. And she says, he is earning $7,000 less than me for doing exactly the same job. And she says, and that's a lot of money, Jude, if you're in your mid-20s and maybe you're getting married and trying to, pay either a mortgage or a rent or whatever. And Jude, I think a lot of young people in Ireland are just simply voting with their feet. Jude, if you've spent years going to university, fees, accommodation, books, whatever else, and suddenly you find yourself, wait a minute, hey, this is not paying. Go off to Australia or Canada or somewhere, why go into teaching?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the problem is wider than teaching, because there's an awful lot of vacancies in a lot of jobs, I gather, that there are people who haven't gone back to their own jobs after being in lockdown. And I gather there's quite a few professions and jobs that are, just people aren't available for them. But let's stick with the teachers, as you say. I think in any job, Pat, I think you'd agree there's two things involved. One is how much you've been paid, and two is what are your conditions of working. Yeah. And if you mentioned the nurses earlier on, and we're talking here about the teachers. Both jobs, the conditions under which they're working are very, very difficult. The nurses, quite obviously, with the pandemic, were run off their feet. I mean, and the doctors as well. So there's no need to discuss that at all. But teaching was very hard for teachers. I know a number of them that said, you could say, well, look, sure, they didn't have to worry about the class. They were at home and they were doing it through Zoom. So, kids weren't going to run around. Well, a lot of kids weren't even going to bother their Barney turning up.
So I had a sort of teach an English class to a group of migrants there last year. After about a month, 6 weeks, Jude, I had enough of it. It's seriously stressful trying to keep, and I have another niece who's a music teacher, and she says, it's a lot of work trying to say, no, you have to know whatever way you're trying to teach somebody, maybe playing the piano. How do you explain it? Jude, my eldest son, who's also a teacher, I should point out, says to me one time, he says, Dad, I know what you do. If you think it's all so easy, I slagged him about the 3 months off in the summer. He says, start on a Monday morning and see by a Friday evening if you can keep a class of 25, 30 kids and, for a week and see how, it is. Just you watch two toddlers for an hour, you're knackered.
That's right. That's right. Anybody who talks about teaching and hasn't done teaching, anybody who passes judgment on the soft job it is, they clearly literally don't know what they're talking about. Yeah. I know from having faced, certainly at secondary school level for 10 years, by God, it is a very hugely rewarding job and I loved it, but it was also very stressful. And I'm not exaggerating when I say I still would have the occasional nightmare about teaching kids in secondary school. It does leave a mark on you. There's no doubt about that. And for people to dare to say, and underpaid teachers, that they've got an easy number, it's disgraceful. What they should do is jack the pay up significantly. Seriously. I mean, they're dealing with the future. They're dealing with our kids. We're talking about our kids of the future.
But here's the thing. Say you're a young guy gets in the Republic of Ireland. I'll use the Republic. You can use the North. Say you get 4 or 5 honours in your leaving cert, and you go into teaching. Your mucker goes on to law, and your other mucker goes into accountancy, and you meet up for a pint after 10 years, and you're on 40 grand or 50 grand a year. They're earning double that, if not treble that, and they're driving BMWs and Mercedes, and you're running around in a second-hand Ford Escort. You sort of realize why, saying, oh shit, wait a minute, I'll go. That's why a lot of people are dropping out of teaching and saying, like, if you've got the brains to become a teacher, you've got the brains to become someone else as well.
Yeah, it's too bad, really, because as I say, we're talking about our children or our children's children, and you would think that the populace, the governments, would know well enough to reward people for this kind of work, because it is so absolutely central. It's not just a question of producing people who can do jobs. It's about people's happiness and their ability to live a decent life inside their heads and emotionally and every other way. And yet we pay the people who are supposed to produce these.
They shape future generations.
That's right. You never forget. Nobody ever forgets the teachers that taught them. You never forget them. And we all know too, well, certainly I would say, that the teacher who encouraged you, the teacher who seemed to care about you, that's the guy or woman that you're going to respond for. So they really have your future in their hands.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
On that note, since we haven't got a tanker of the week, but we just have to knock on down, and we are open to offers, suggestions, I think, Pat, would that be correct?
That's absolutely true, Dr. Collins.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's food for thought. Food for thought. Thank you, Pat. And we will meet on Friday with the help of God.
Catch you Friday.
Help of God, okay.